Mathematical and comparison operators. In the previous nugget, we saw a preview of a commandlet called whereObject that we'll be actually covering in more detail in the next nugget. One of the things that did is it looked at properties of a particular object and compared them to some value, and it left the objects in the pipeline if there was equality in that comparison, or it took them out if not. Well, the way PowerShell does all that is called comparison operators. Those are what allow PowerShell to look at different values and determine their relationship to one another, if they're equal, if one is greater than the other, and so forth. So in this nugget, we're going to focus on those operators. We'll start with the basic math operators for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We'll look at a couple of advanced math operators that you might not have a lot of use for, but if you do need them, it'll be good to know they're there. Then we'll look at some basic and advanced comparisons, ways of comparing properties and values against one another. We'll talk about case sensitivity in these comparisons, and then we'll talk about something really important in Windows PowerShell that can kind of be one of those little gotchas that messes you up, called parsing modes. We'll look at two parsing modes in Windows PowerShell, including its command parsing mode as well as its expression parsing mode, which lets us actually experiment and play with math and comparisons right at the command line. Let's start by looking at those basic math operators in Windows PowerShell, and also take a look at a cool feature of Windows PowerShell. It's designed to actually evaluate mathematical and comparison expressions right at the command line. So we don't need to do anything special to try, for example, and add 5 plus 5. And there's the addition operator for Windows PowerShell. 10 minus 1 shows you how subtraction works. If you want to see multiplication, that's the asterisk. 10 times 10 gives us 100. And division is the forward slash. So 100 divided by 10 is 10. This is one instance where PowerShell is sensitive about the slash. Although it'll allow a forward slash or a backslash as a path separator, when it comes to division, it's the forward slash or you get an error message. So those are the basic math things. Now, Windows PowerShell also supports some more advanced mathematical operations. For example, you can group things in parentheses. 5 plus 5 times 10 helps you make sure that the 5 times 10 happens first, and then the 5 is added later. 5 times 5 plus 5 demonstrates something similar. There's also something called a modulus operator. If we take 100 and divide it by 9, we get 11 with some left over. If we take 100 modulus 9, we just get the leftover portion. So it's just the remainder from a division operation. Windows PowerShell's math capabilities are pretty simplistic. You don't tend to need a lot of math capabilities for most administrative functions, and so PowerShell isn't loaded down with a bunch of math operators and math functions that you might not need. There are ways to get at more advanced mathematical things like algebraic functions, trigonometry, sines, cosines, tangents, and arctangents, and so forth. It's a little beyond the scope of what we'll discuss here, though, because we're really focused on using Windows PowerShell just for Windows administration. Something you will use a lot, however, are comparison operators. For example, is 5 equal to 5? Yes, it is. The purpose of any comparison in Windows PowerShell is to generate either a true or a false. 5 is equal to 5, so that results in true. 10 is not equal to 5, so that results in false. And now you've seen one of the comparison operators in Windows PowerShell. -EQ checks to see if something is equal. You've got to be a little bit careful. If you're used to using a scripting language like VBScript or other programming languages, you may be used to using the equal sign as a comparison operator. Now, PowerShell doesn't do that. PowerShell only uses the equal sign as an assignment operator. For example, to assign the value 5 to the variable var. If you need to do comparisons, it's -EQ. Similarly, other comparison operators from more traditional programming languages don't work here either. If you want to see if 10 is greater than 5, it's GT. Of course, you could substitute a variable. Is 10 greater than whatever's in var? True. What's in var? Oh, that's right, we put 5 in there. Is 10 less than whatever we put into var? No, it's not. Is 10 greater than or equal to whatever's in var? Yes, it is. Is 10 less than or equal to whatever's in var? No, it's not. And you can also do string comparisons, primarily with equality. Does hello equal hello? Yes, it does. Does hello equal goodbye? No, it doesn't. So those are the basic comparison operators in Windows PowerShell. Now let's look at some of the more advanced comparison operators. These primarily get into the ability to do multiple part comparisons. For example, we can ask if 10 is greater than whatever's in the variable var, and if 10 is less than whatever's in the variable var2. The result is false. Well, let's see what's in var. Well, 5 is in var, 10 is definitely greater than that, so this part was true. Now what's in var2? Well, nothing. Well, 10 is not less than nothing, so this part was false. So our result was true and false. The AND operator will return true if both sides are true. Because both sides were not true, it returned false. Another Boolean operator is -or. This will return true if either side of the equation is true. We've already determined that the first side is true, and that's really all that's necessary for a true result. Let's put 100 into var2 and try that first comparison again with the AND. Now the result is true. 10 is greater than what's in var, that's 5, and 10 is less than what's in var2, that's 100. So true and true creates a result of true. You can get pretty much infinitely complex with these. Now there's another operator called -not. It's used slightly differently. Remember we said that the first half of this will currently return true. The second half will also return true. And provided both halves return true, we get a true result. The -not operator reverses true and false. So 10 is greater than what's in var, that'll be true. 10 is less than what's in var too, that'll be true. Not will reverse it to make it false. So we'll have true and false. The result should be false because both sides of the equation aren't true. We can put that on the other side too. That simply changed the first true into a false, which made the entire thing false because it wasn't true on both sides of the AND. You can get very complex with these comparisons. We tried to keep these simple right here, but obviously when you start working with things like services and processes and event logs and other things, you may need to create more complex comparison criteria, and now you know how. We already saw a brief example of comparing strings. Hello equals hello, which is true. But here's a tricky question. Does hello equal hello if it's typed in all uppercase letters? It does, because by default Windows PowerShell is case insensitive, which means all strings are compared without regard to case. If you need to do a case-sensitive comparison, PowerShell has another set of operators. They just are the same, the EQ, -GT, -LT, and so forth. You just stick a C in front for case-sensitive. So in this case it's false. CEQ does take case into account, and hello with mostly lowercase letters is not equal to hello in all uppercase letters. The last operator I'll show you is, does hello not equal hello? And this is kind of where the logic gets tricky. Hello in lowercase letters does equal hello in uppercase letters because PowerShell is case sensitive by default. Since they do equal, then it's false that they are not equal. Again, though, this does have a case-sensitive version, CNE, we're just tacking a C onto the front of it, and that would be true because hello does not equal uppercase hello. So that's how you can deal with case sensitivity in string comparisons in Windows PowerShell. And that takes us to the last thing we need to discuss, which are the two parsing modes that Windows PowerShell has. So far in this nugget, we've primarily been looking at the expression parsing mode. So when I type 5 plus 5, I get a result. When I use a comparison like is var equal to 100, I get a result. That's because when I typed these, I didn't begin the command line with a command, like get process or get service or write host. Because the command line didn't start with a command, PowerShell used expression parsing mode, which meant it looked at the expression, evaluated it, and returned the result of the expression. If I start with a command name, though, PowerShell uses a different parsing mode called command parsing mode. This time PowerShell is not looking to evaluate expressions, it's just looking at everything as a literal series of characters. There are times when you want it to evaluate expressions, even if they're after a command. And the way to do that is to simply enclose the expression in parentheses. This forces Windows PowerShell to use its expression parsing mode within the parentheses, so it will evaluate the expression and return the result. So I can say, write the result of 5 plus 5 in the 4-color green. Or I can say, write the result of var equals 10 in the 4-color, let's say red. Had I omitted the parentheses here, PowerShell would have gotten really confused. It would have replaced $var with its contents and then written a literal -EQ10 in the foreground color red. So that's how you can control the difference between expression parsing mode and command parsing mode in the shell. In this nugget, we looked at the mathematical and comparison operators in Windows PowerShell. We started off with some of the basic math operators that Windows PowerShell uses for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We looked at a couple of advanced math operators too, and then we moved on to the basic comparison operators for equality, inequality, greater than, less than, and so forth. We looked at some advanced comparisons, Boolean comparisons that allow us to compare multiple things at once, and we talked about the case sensitivity in Windows PowerShell, which by default is case insensitivity. And we also looked at Windows PowerShell's two parsing modes, its command parsing mode as well as its expression parsing mode. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.